2 years ago, okay, how much do we think? Well, at least 20%. I think our guess back then would be more. I think they would say, oh yeah, maybe 1/3 of the app should have mixed reality in it. Back then, I would have guessed. So now I would consider that as a failure. On the other hand, when you really look at the number of apps that are right now in mixed reality, I think there is a lot of good stuff. And I think that there is enough content to justify getting a Quest 3 just for mixed reality alone.
Hello and welcome to Spatial Realities, your podcast for all professionals in XR, spatial computing and the metaverse. My name is Thomas Riedel, host of the podcast and tech journalist from Cologne. And as always, I'm with my co-host Thomas Bedenk, experienced XR expert from Berlin. Good day, hey.
Hey, Thomas.
And for this episode, we want to welcome our first Italian guest. He's one of the most influential XR professionals in Europe, very well known for his work at Shapes XR, and he has now started a podcast and newsletter titled XR AI Spotlight, in which he published a mixed reality report where he gathered some interesting insights. Buongiorno, signor Gabriele Romagnoli.
Wow, I didn't expect that. Hi, Thomas. Hi. Hi, guys.
Yeah, we are recording 10 o'clock in the mornings. Voices are a little bit deeper, but we all had our espresso, of course. Gabriele and Thomas, you have been meeting up in Germany lately at Europa Park.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was a great opportunity. And Thomas said, hey, we should talk. We should discuss about this report you wrote and maybe also about other things, what you guys are doing. So yeah, happy to be here.
So you have been also at the Aurea Award and you are a guest for a long time there and actually participating there. Maybe talk a little bit about that in the first place. What do you do there and how do you like it?
Absolutely. So our award is the 7th edition, and it's an award show that happens at Europa Park. For who doesn't know, it's the second biggest theme park in Europe. And there are two core reasons why I especially like it. One being that you see really technology, how it's been developed and in the open. So when you can try the latest prototypes from an AI photo booth to going on a tower and wearing AR glasses and seeing like spotlight of the park, highlighting different attractions. So because they have been doing this for a decade, so right, putting VR on roller coasters. So I think it's great to see this, not just in the lab, not just in a enthusiast studio, but more like out in the open. So that's great. And of course is the people, right? So you get really like a selected community, amazing folks like Thomas, of course, and many others that indeed are share this passion and are really the doers, the makers. So that's one of the things that I really like. And personally, I'm one of the people responsible for the organization and more like programming, selecting the finalists, because there are this year were over 100 applications, and out of those, it's about how do you filter, how do you select who are the finalists, managing part of all that process, as well as the program, being there, moderated a panel overall, but I think absolutely great experience. And Thomas, it's probably can share something, but curious to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I've been, we mentioned in our last episode, I've been there quite a few times as well. And it's always amazing. They always have some kind of program that you wouldn't ever get at a different conference. Like being in a theme park does make a difference. And then I especially like is exactly what Gabriele said, the conversations of people there and trying out the prototypes. Like years ago when they first experimented with the diving in XR, for example, we got to try it before the public there, and they always have something new to try every year, where they also kind of getting feedbacks from us experts. So I think that's part of why Michael Mack does this, to kind of tap into the expertise of all the great people coming there and see what he could do next.
And mixed reality is a topic of this episode. You made a report about that, but how important was mixed reality this year for the Aurea Award?
Well, I have to say that mixed reality in itself, I think it's embedded. It's not really, there is a distinction yet, I would say, between when we think about a VR experience and an AR experience. So I think it still belongs to the spectrum as a whole. Of course, immersive has always been at the core at the Aurea Award, so it was like all over the place. From sometimes like tools like 2Sync was one of the finalists that allows basically to scan the room and map the digital content automatically to the room. So for example, if you have a couch, depending on the size, the digital content is automatically adjusted, to something that is maybe like a bit unconventional, like a bat mask, a bat mask with a phone in it, with sort of a headset where you shout, and the LiDAR in the phone that is attached to the mask helps you to map the environment around you. So then in this case, that is also mixed reality, even though it's a bit more augmented reality. So I wouldn't say that there was like a specific focus on what, at least I consider mixed reality, thinking about the pass-through experience that you get in a headset like the Vision Pro, like the Quest, other than something that is more augmented reality like AR. But there is this wish, I think, to go and move to a lighter form factor, glasses, and we've seen some experiments there. But again, it's not straightforward. You have to fight with a lot of things when you are outside. You know, like the brightness, the positioning, so of this digital content. So it's gonna be a journey.
That's very interesting, because often mixed reality is being sold as the next thing which will help us get to the billion people or something like that, you know, like makes everything easier, makes it more accessible, and maybe it will be, but as you are curating all those projects, trying out all those prototypes, and we will also see that a little bit in the report, I think, it might be that it's very hard to get there and not that easy as it seems.
100%. I mean, Thomas is shaking his head. I'm going to share my thoughts there because honestly, the moment that the Quest Pro was announced, I was like, okay, now we do have a headset that is capable of a decent pass-through mixed reality. So we are going to see people pushing out content and having it something that is instead more meaningful for the physical environment, for the real world. And then Quest Pro, of course, was not the success people were hoping for, price point or whatever that might be. And then it's like, okay, now Quest 3 is coming out. So now we're going to see all this content. Now we are, of course, and it takes time, right? It takes time to produce good content. But again, as we'll see, like around right now, 10% of the apps on the store have some form of mixed reality. Again, these are rough numbers. They are not precise. It might be 15, it might be 8. But that's kind of like the range that we kind of like expect. What does that mean? I mean, I think that... And there isn't even like, let's say, a formal killer app or something that you would say, oh my God, this was so amazing, except maybe something we'll discuss later. Maybe I have some thoughts on where I think it's nice to focus on when it's about mixed reality. Yeah, I mean, I think that developing for the real world, it's hard. It is very hard. And because there are a lot of difficulties of adjusting content to any room. And I've heard stories, for example, from Lucas Risotto. He made Pillow. And again, a lot of nightmare when Meta's update SDK broke his app because, of course, he has this app where he basically asks people to lay down in bed and have content. The moment that Meta added a lay down mode, it broke everything. So it was like, what the hell is supposed to help? Also story, I'm trying to talk with Laserdance, the Belgian developer, I'm going to find the name, but extremely skilled, the guy that created Cubism. And Thomas van Bouwel could be?
I'm not sure, but
I think it could be. And there it says there is this laser game where people need to dodge the lasers that are in the room. And again, the release has been postponed because it's very hard. It's very hard to create content that adjusts and is robust for any room. So that's been one thing. Because from the hardware side, I mean, the mixed reality is pretty impressive, right? So at this point, at the price point that there is right now. So I think that there are still difficulties when it's about pushing, and probably mixed reality was not the solution that we were waiting for. I think that we still need something else. The hardware and the price point is still not the price. So what is it? I am not 100% sure. Maybe it's just time.
Yeah, so Gabriele, why I was shaking my head is kind of basically what you said before this answer, because I think it is part of the spectrum of XR and VR, even before it was called out as mixed reality. I mean, these terminologies are a bit weird. And what you have in Europa Park on a roller coaster ride is a mixed reality. Proprioception, the feeling reality while watching VR is already also mixed reality. So walking in a real room, hitting your toe on the chair, also mixed reality. So, I mean, the point is, I think, to integrate your human experience with different levels of immersion with those classes. And so the evolution there from a technology is definitely there. Things, more possibilities. What used to be possible in a $10,000 Vario headset is now possible in a $300 headset. So there's definitely change, but I agree with you that to really leverage the power of mixed reality, if you want to call it like this, is to make more of it. There's already an immense power in seeing your environment when you put the headset on. It makes a huge difference compared to being in the virtual space right away and transition into that virtual space. But and I'm sure we'll look at this, combining it with XR, understanding your real world context is the key to making good mixed reality.
I was not expecting that we would start with what is mixed reality. Probably a question we could talk endlessly, and this means we should not talk about it, but have some common ground, which is, there's something from the reality integrated into virtual things, or virtual things are integrated into reality, and somehow this is a spectrum of mixed reality. I would suggest let's dive deep into the Mixed Reality Report 2024 you have brought to us. First question, why did you do it? What was the setup for it?
So, I mean, the trigger was I cannot find mixed reality apps. Where are them? How do I find them? And the reason, like an easy filter that you can just use on the Meta Store, sometimes you find in there apps that are like, well, you cannot sort them, right? You cannot have like, I want mixed reality apps that are maybe like puzzles, or maybe they are learnings. So how do I find these apps? And things have changed because I've started building this report before the merge of the store. Mm-hmm. So what happened is that at the beginning there was like a store section, and then there was a side quest section, because that was something that allowed me to filter for mixed reality apps. So there was this mix of the two. And so at this point I'm like collecting this information, and then I realize, so I have now a list, but I need to add more information to it. So before there was just a link, maybe a short description. But then I realized that I've also been sharing it on Reddit, and people ask, okay, but how can we filter? How can we sort? So then, okay, let's add categories. And then, oh yeah, but we want the ratings. Okay, fine, let's add the ratings. And this is all kind of like at this point a manual process. So it means that I go there, I check the ratings at that specific point of time, make a thumbnail as well, because I think visual is also important. So that's what you get. So on the report itself, you get this, and you get 10 different parameters. So if the app is free, paid, on what platform it is, the rating, the number of ratings, these thumbnails, and so on for each one of those. So there was, and then at that point I realized, okay, now I have quite some information, especially now that I've collected the ratings and the number of ratings and added the categories. And actually a difficult part was sometimes the category, because I mean, is this a music app or a learning app when someone teaches you to play the piano? Mm-hmm. I mean,
the answer is yes.
Point, yeah, to both. Yeah. It's a learning app and it's a music app. So what you end up is apps with 7 gazillion categories, and you cannot make sense out of it. And that's what happened on the store, in a way, right? You have apps that are learning, creativity, and music. Okay, sure, it's a bit of everything, but I would say that maybe in the case of Piano Vision, it is more of a learning app, because it teaches you to play music, but as a learning purpose. In the case of maybe something like Scene Traders, that also is mixed reality, that's more of a music app. Then you start wondering, is this a fitness app? Because you do a lot of exercise. Well, not really, because I think more of fitness is more something like FitXR. So there was a bit of filtering and decisions needs to be made. And up to my own judgment, I'm pretty sure some people might not agree, but that's the approach I took.
Did you crawl the web, or did you manually transfer stuff, or how did you do it?
Manually. So it's really, you go there and because it's so I don't have specifically the let's say the coding skills. If anybody listening wants to reach out and we can build something together, happy to do it. But also because there aren't like hundreds that get released constantly, right? So it's about going back, seeing latest apps and so on. And I'm pretty sure that I've missed some. I mean, there might be some that I've missed, but those also tends to be the one that are maybe really, really unknown. And maybe do you wonder sometimes is something that is marked on mixed reality apps, let's say, deserve in a way to be on the list? I've tried to put everything at the moment, but that might not be always the case, right? Because again, now that the store is open, anybody can submit, anybody can appear, and you see this weird behavior in a way where you look for something and then there are like super popular app and then there are apps that nobody knows. It's like, why is this showing on the top 10? Like, can you explain me the logic? Well, this is up there. And then you see something that, are like these very good, well thought out apps. An example is like Rescue the Holes, an app that has only 15 ratings on the store. But it's really like, this game when you have a ring and you need to not touch the edge of a metal strings, otherwise it makes a noise and then you lose. Something like that, but with little puzzle, with tracks that you can build on your own. It's a well thought out app, but it's impossible to find. So I'm like, it's crazy how that happens. So that's one of the things I found out, that sometimes the nice, well-designed, thought-out apps do not show up on the store. So let's help people find them.
Yeah, that's something I also really think it's important with all those stores. You have that with every store. You have a lot of apps nobody sees, but they are awesome. And the problem is you have only a limited amount of eyeballs. And so you cannot show everybody. So you have to make decisions, and this is why every store is problematic. There's not a good store. Every store is shit. There's no exception to the rule here, and you have to deal with that with the developer. I think that's just the truth we have to deal with. But how many apps did you actually find?
So as of the moment, when I published the report, there were actually 382 mixed reality apps for Quest. At the moment, right now, so we are end of January, we are above 400 abundantly. Let me just...
And you only collected for Quest?
No, that's another point. So for initially, I also start doing that for Vision Pro, more like apps that I like that maybe I want to test. I have slowed down on that side because I was like, okay, I don't know anymore what to do. Any app that is on a Vision Pro is technically a mixed reality apps. So should I add all Vision Pro app? And then it's going to be a mess. So I have also a tag where I says the platform, and that would allow me to keep building the list for it. Because I want to add also, for example, WebXR. That's another one. That's, let's say, not dependent on the headset. But yeah, so I think that's right now. So at the moment, there are 434 apps, and let me see. I can tell you later how many are for Quest, but the majority, like absolute majority.
So you collected all the data by hand, which was, of course, a lot of work. Kudos for that in the first place, because I know how hard it is. I'm collecting co-working spaces and have similar problems like you. Like, what does a co-working space even mean? Like, it's really hard to do categories with that stuff. So thank you very much.
With the definition of mixed reality.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. So in the name of the whole XR community, thank you for doing this work. I'm pretty sure I speak all for them when I say that. But what did you find there? So you had all the data, you collected it, you went through all the different categories and looked at it. And what were the interesting things you were discovering?
Yeah. So one important thing is maybe I don't know if you can put the link to the report in the description. One thing is that the list is open. So the only thing you need to do to get it, so anybody can do its own analytics or consideration. You can just subscribe to the XR AI Spotlight.substack newsletter. When you go there, you get the list as a welcome email. So you can go there. It's in Notion. You can filter it, play with it. So just that, So what I have noticed is that, so there were a few things. It doesn't seem that for the biggest app, for the top rated apps, so the apps with tens of thousands, sometimes thousands of reviews, mixed reality was the core feature. So they were not built for mixed reality. So I felt it was more like something that was added later. For example, FeedXR, one of the top-rated non-gaming app, was born as a VR first, right? Same things for Trip, same things for virtual desktop, right? So, and I
but
think
also
it
for
has
gaming apps like the Meo, Beat Saber, and so on, they were all were built for virtual reality, and later on, mixed reality was added.
Correct, and it's inevitable. I think it has to do with the fact that those were released earlier. So one thing that I'm curious right now, for example, is to see how that evolves in time. Because there are, for example, very good mixed reality apps that have been released across November, December. And what I'm curious is have those apps gathered enough traction or interest from people? Because another aspect, what I'm actually really looking forward to is see how the number of ratings and the ratings itself has changed in 1 month, 2 months, 3 months. Because then you can see the extra number of rating for an app, for example, what was the one? Wall Town Wonders?
Yeah.
There were a few.
Yeah, where you can have little towns on the walls of your room.
Correct.
Looking very tiny, very cozy, maybe a little bit flat in the gameplay, but very nice to look at.
And then you see, exactly, and then you can see, is this app got more ratings than, for example, a standard VR app? Oh, interesting. So people are, let's say, using more of this or exploring more puzzles other than strategy games or so on. So I think that so far what was clear is that the one that were on top, the top-rated mixed reality was not the core feature, and that had to do probably with a timing aspect, for sure. And yeah, I mean, another thing that was interesting to me, and I think it made sense, was that there were a lot of puzzles. So when we look at games, and I think it makes sense because puzzles tends to be something that you also don't fully take advantage of the whole room. So that makes it also easier to implement, right? Because you don't need to have stuff attached to walls or stuff like that, like, for example, an adventure game or something like this.
Just hover somewhere in the room.
Exactly. It could be on a table, you could be sitting, and then you make it. And I think it just makes sense to have also that level of awareness where, okay, I'm focused on the puzzle, but I can look my surrounding and be aware of what's happening. So I think that's certainly one thing that makes sense. And the other is that, for example, productivity apps were behind in so many ways. So when we look at non-gaming apps, so that means, for example, indeed productivity, maybe fitness, also the rating and the quality of those was certainly lower. So you had, I mean, I don't want to sound bad, but you get much more, let's say, garbagey stuff, stuff that is like, okay, what is this? This is not even working, right? And you see from the rating, from the reviews, so you see that the ratings are much more scattered. And I think it's a shame, something that we are now seeing that it must change. Because when we look at all these Android XR, we look at all AR glasses, I mean, what people are going to do there is going to be not much that gaming, because it's going to be a utility factor, right? It's more going. So I'm curious to see how the mixed reality world is going to evolve on a headset that is now available to everybody, and maybe push people to use it and explore more in that side.
Gabriele, so you described some apps in details. How many of those apps would you say, just rough percentage, you have tried, or is it just looked at and listed in your?
Yeah. So it's hard because when there are 400 apps, I cannot say that I've tried them all by far, right? So the one that you see me at some point, I've also mentioned some names in the report about these are the top 5 apps, for example, that I would recommend. Those are all apps that I've tried. So how do I know? Out of 300, maybe I've tried, I'd say 50, I would say. Right, out of the one that I know, out of the one that I don't, and there was another surprise. Do you guys know DigiGods?
Mm-hmm. No,
me neither. And I was like, one of the top-rated gaming app that I think has some kind of like little mixed reality component in it. Something that I still curious what they did, but everybody keeps mentioning, Gorilla Tag. And I think that there are a few other apps that are like maybe quietly, but still got tens of thousands of, I think 10,000 reviews or something like this, like incredible amount. So it's also interesting to see how when you start crawling the store, you find things like, these apps, what's this? Never heard about it. And then because it doesn't show up as often as Gorilla Tag in most sold or recommended.
Yeah. So do you think developers are helped more by not having figured it out yet, or by the limitations of the development framework?
I think that it's so people are still struggling with all the room mapping and all the let's say the framework, right, that Meta has provided. So there is still like a lot of headaches and all that. It has improved dramatically, for sure. But the question is like, I don't think it's clear exactly what are they going to do with this mixed reality aspect, part of it. So there is indeed World Town Wonders where you put cities around when you do the strategy games that play a bit around your room. But it's tough. And sometimes I don't know. I mean, I don't know why. Maybe it's also the audience that at the end up using the headset tends to be not the one that go beyond gaming, so they just stick with the games, and that's just like how it has evolved, and that's not going to change overnight. Now I have 2-3 productivity apps. Now my dad is going to start using it, or we are going to start using it because maybe we see this still as a, let's say, primary like a gaming platform.
But then at one point in your report, you said, quote, I think mixed reality is the perfect addition to any fitness experience. So there seems to be something happening there in the fitness area.
I mean, I think it does, because the typical example is a bit Thrill of the Fight. I don't know if you have tried it out. It's this boxing game that it can be very, very intense in a way. But I've never played it because I was really afraid of smashing my hands against walls and furniture and so on. While instead, when you are in mixed reality, then it's like, okay, I can give it all. I can even move a bit further, even overlap a bit with my couch because I know where it is. So I still have that specific space. I do think that if well designed, it makes sense. Now, what I also said that it doesn't make sense when there is just stuff coming out of the wall and you have to slash it, because that is still a standing experience, right? Like, as I said, Synth Raiders or maybe Les Mills Body Combat, right? All these other apps where you're just smashing stuff that comes at you. FeedXR, what they did is that they had this specific mode or studio that was specifically designed for mixed reality. And again, they were there, one of the top rated, not because of that specific studio, but I think it shows that you need to take a different approach when designing for that. And I think that fitness, it makes a lot of sense because you must be aware of your surrounding, right? So I think there is certainly value there, and yeah, I think a must add for fitness experiences. One
I've tried quite a few times is called Punch Fit Mixed Reality. I don't know if you tried that one, and it's kind of also a nice mixed reality experience. It could work as both, one of those again. But in mixed reality, you don't only see the virtual gloves, you also see your real arms, and you're punching stuff right next to you. And as you said, you're not afraid of hitting something. And then once you punch it, it like bounces back from the walls of your living room and stuff. So there's a little bit of an element,
nice,
which it's not super essential to see the stuff laying around, but it's a nice effect. All the blocks you've punched are then just spread out in your living room. So it can definitely add. And I think in a lot of those fitness situations, you don't necessarily. I mean, I my favorite game is still Beat Saber. I play it all the time, and I would rather play it in virtual reality than in mixed reality Beat Saber, because it's so immersive. Exactly. It's such nice effects, and it really
you don't need right. You're still standing, slicing stuff. So what?
Yeah,
is nothing bad is gonna happen usually.
But I think for a lot of people, being in your own living room doing the fitness is more approachable than being in a whole different virtual space. So I think that's definitely mixed reality and fitness go together pretty well.
Yeah. When I think now what you discovered in terms of numbers, so we are at over 400 apps which you alone discovered have mixed reality components or are totally built for mixed reality. We have about almost 3,000 apps in the Quest store, which means that's like over 15% or something like that. I try to figure out if this is a good number or a bad number. I remember, you and me, we have been at the XR Hack together where Meta pushed very hard for mixed reality. They not only did it at our hackathon, but also on all the other hackathons globally. And so I ask myself, do you think that's a lot mixed reality, or was it not successful, their strategy? I try to figure out if those numbers tell us something in the one or in the other direction.
I don't know, because now we are assessing this number when the fact already happened, right? So it's tough to, if we would have said, okay, 2 years ago, okay, how much do we think? Well, at least 20%. I think our guess back then would have been more. Mm-hmm. I think I would say, maybe 1/3 of the apps should have mixed reality in it. That back then I would have guessed. So now I would consider that as a failure, right? I mean, like not going that well. On the other hand, when you really look at the number of apps that are right now in mixed reality, I think there is a lot of good stuff. I mean, when you go there and when you start filtering for higher ratings and you get apps, that's one of the things I like to do with the list. For example, you can say, okay, I want something higher than 4 ratings with more than 20 reviews, for example. So you get really good stuff because you get those apps that maybe are not really popular and maybe you want to try. And then you can filter per category. Maybe you want puzzle games, or maybe I want something more action or adventure, and you get really good stuff. And I think that there is enough content, me personally, to justify getting a Quest 3 just for mixed reality alone. Mm-hmm. So if you look at numbers, I would say, yeah, not really. But when you look at what's in there, there is enough hours of gameplays, and more are coming, that I think justify getting the headset even just from mixed reality alone.
And I would argue in that sense that especially for something like that, it's not the quantity that matters. It's the quality of mixed reality experience. We all know that more and more in gaming, but also in XR, it's your key 5 apps or what that are defining your use time, and not having 100 apps like sometimes on the cell phone. Even though there it has changed, like people playing only Brawl Stars or people playing only some clicker game, So as long as you as a platform have those unique experiences and they're working really, really well, it's adding to your platform. I don't think it's creating that moat to other platforms that Meta is looking for. So I think in that sense, it was definitely successful.
And I want to do one thing. So we have been discussing about gaming, because that's what we always gravitate towards. The point is, what about non-gaming? Because that's also one of the things that I try to do in the report itself, because That's one of my interests in a way. What about creativity? What about productivity? What about other things? And I think that there was, in a way, a bit of a missed opportunity or a failure, however you want to call it, is that at the end, we still see this as it's a multi-screen thing. When we think about productivity, or seeing a big movie. So there are a lot of video players, for example, in the productivity category. There are a lot of these other video player or multi-screen monitor productivity setup. And I think that there were some things that instead are that I didn't expect in the non-productivity. For example, these volumetric experiences. So it means that you can, for example, get a volumetric capture and put it in mixed reality in your space. There were 2 or 3 or 4 of these apps that are actually very nice. Soapbox being one, Voluverse being another one, Scene Z another one. That is like, oh, I see this. I can see how the value of seeing this volumetric capture experience of an artist, of a performer, and it's not something that is widespread, but something that is where you see the appeal. When you see it's like, oh, this actually makes a lot of sense to see this performance of these 2 guys playing the guitar in my living room. Pretty cool. The other thing is that we all look at on these screens and monitors, and we haven't tapped into this reality of the widget. Because let's not forget that Meta has forgotten about these augments, right? What they call. There was this thing that would be positioned in our own space, and maybe it would be the clock, and maybe it would be the calendar, and maybe it would be the frame, and all these kind of things that I think could also link to the gaming experience, right? When you get a trophy, you get that on your shelf, and when you get this. And this is something that failed in a way to fail promise, right? And that's because that's what bring it beyond just the gaming, beyond the app that is closed, and then brings it in your environment and adds the value for other games or productivity.
And those augments probably also have been the reason why we thought there would be way more apps in the store, because they are so tiny, and it's like just a little thing, not doing much, but looking good, or delivering one piece of information or something like that. But they're not here yet.
I think there are a couple of things to consider here. First of all, we already had this from an experiential view. We had this kind of stuff with the first HoloLens. You had these little captures, you could place them. It was always a gimmick. It wasn't a coherent use case or experience that makes sense. And then we had the fail of the Quest Pro, which was a device where they were going to push exactly that direction. I mean, before the whole spatial computing Apple thing happened, that was the plan of Meta, to use something like a Quest Pro more as a productivity device. But they failed to deliver on it. They failed to push on it. They were a year late with bringing any essential features to the Quest Pro, and the hardware was outdated, so processor-wise. So it was not successful as a product. And I think that comes back for both the Quest Pro and the Apple Vision Pro. We're still not there with the form factor. It's too heavy to do it all day with this. And what's the added value of wearing it all the time? It's not just having another window. I mean, really, I will buy a second monitor. It is in some situations, when I'm sitting in a plane and I have a multi-monitor view, then it makes sense in the current form factor. But what's the added value? And the Android XR showed a little bit of that. I think the circle to search is a promising feature, but we need a much more of those productivity things that really leverage mixed reality to make it worth you're using this. Because when it's entertainment, when you're watching a movie, you're sitting in front of a movie for 2 hours, that's the time you're dedicating. You don't want to do something else. When it's productivity, you want to get something done, and either it helps you to get something done or it doesn't help you and distracts you. And we haven't solved that part.
I mean, some people, that's the only thing I hear about Vision Pro though. I mean, when you go around, oh yeah, it's a fantastic second monitor, just buy it for that. And I just watch movie in it, I cannot watch any other movie. Of course, you see this from the fanboys, you go on Reddit on the Vision Pro, and that's everything you get. And you don't hear about all the people, it's like, yeah, mine is collecting dust. So I think that for some people, having a huge monitor and being connected with their Mac is just what they need. But I agree with you. We need something different. And honestly, I'm not sure the Google Map is the answer, because that's what a lot of Android XR is like. Oh yeah, I can use one. No, I don't know. Okay,
I think the circle to search was a more powerful demonstration than the take me to Liverpool. I mean, it is a nice thing to have them think about this and to do it, and you don't have to enter it with like this clumsy keyboard like you had on the Vive with the Google Maps and stuff like that. But yeah, I'm missing it. I keep saying this example of just copy pasting from the real world into your digital documents, and we've seen that in prototypes and demos. But why is an essential feature like that not part of the Vision Pro or the Android XR yet? I mean, for me, that has to be something. There's such an obvious bridge between, you have a book and a newspaper article in front of you. You just take it out of that reel and bring it into the digital domain super seamlessly. And that's just one example. But why don't we have that? It's not so complicated to do.
Mm-hmm. And that's a good transition actually to something else you did. You tagged all the items on your list. And one tag, for example, was AI. How many AI tags could you give out?
Let me tell you, and I think I need to add a couple more. And the important part is probably also like, what is tagged as AI?
All mixed realities AI.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So I think that right now I have 15 apps for Quest tagged as AI.
15.
15. 1 5.
Mm-hmm.
Now, of this, there are a couple. So even Pillow technically was tagged as AI. Why? Because they use AI as part of the creation process of the app. Mm-hmm. So for example, at some point you get all the stars in the sky, and they added the information on all the stars in the sky using AI. Why I've done that? Because I think that when we use XR and AI, we throw everything in a big bucket and we don't kind of like distinguish that. So I took my own take on this. So I have tried to think like, okay, how can these two technology kind of like merge with each other, right? And I found that there are basically like 3 ways. One being, for example, the AI can be used as part of the creation process of the app itself by the developers, right? So let's imagine that maybe you want 3D models, or maybe you want content, or maybe you want moderation, or any other things or maybe you are using AI to do some part of the animation or interpolation as a plugin that is added in Unity or Unreal. There you're using AI as part of the creation process. So that's one way. The other way is when AI behaves like the eyes, right? It's like we're talking about computer vision. So whenever you have, for example, AI that is able to segment and label objects in your room, or maybe, for example, infer information regarding the user behavior in terms of body position just using the headset, and there are other examples, that is another way, right? So this is something that happened and is still invisible to the user, right? Because they don't see, they just see stuff happens. Mm-hmm. And that's the moment that AI still play a huge role. That's why technically any mixed reality app has AI. I mean, we could argue that any VR app has AI also, right? Because of course there is a lot of tech inside. And then there is the other one that is what people usually think about, right? The AI that actually with which the user can interact, right? So then it's like saying something and something appear, for example, or maybe there is an agent, or maybe there is a prompt. So all ways in which the user interacts with AI. So that in a way, once I try to kind of like come up with these 3 groups, AI used to build the app, AI as eye for the XR apps or the experience, and AI with which the user can interact with, that's the moment that I can try to put stuff in buckets, right? And try to think about this in different ways. The first thing that I did, because it of course is the most popular and people relates with, AI, let's look at AI agents. Man, it is a weird place. Like when you start looking at apps and those I tried to try them all, because I was like, okay, I really need to try to understand. When you go in there are a lot of apps that are kind of like broken. The thing doesn't respond. Because, of course, they are very niche, right? So they're not like sometimes built by big teams. So there are a few that, for example, I think one that was very good was virtual speech. That was actually, it really allows you to have a conversation with an AI where you can get a response back and it does make sense. Was actually very good example. Virtual speech was a good one. Another one that's also runs on the web that is not on the list yet, but is Meet Wall. I don't know if you know this. It's like a web experience where you get this owl that comes in your room and there is a portal to the forest, and then you can talk to the owl and ask, oh, how does the forest was born? What are these mushrooms? Very, very nice experience.
That was a very cool experience. It was one of the first ones to do this kind of really live. I had a video on LinkedIn about it when it first came out. The live interaction where you felt like, because it is an owl, it seemed like it works. You know, like if it was a super realistically rendered human, you would have said, that's not working. But in this case,
always this,
it was really nice integrated
chase for realism with these avatars that is crazy. So a lot of are broken. One that I've tried recently that I think it's not now it's tagged on the list as AI is Simtrix. So it's actually a medical app. And it's really responsible. What I like is that at some point you can give instruction to the patient and it behaves accordingly. For example, hey, can you turn on the side? Oh, yeah, sure, I can turn on the side. And the patient turns. It's like, okay. Now, this is...
that's very cool.
We are getting there, right? It's not just about waiting half a minute to get a response that doesn't make sense, but there is also some meaningful spatial element to it, like, hey, move there or move here or turn or so on.
Sounds like a feature which when another app has not, you wonder why. So like it feels so natural and so logic that you think, okay, now I want to talk to people. It's like in Star Trek when the guy takes the mouse and says, computer, you know, like, why can't I talk just to the computer? And that feels like the same. But we're not here yet, of course, but working towards it. All right.
Just one more question in that regard. So did you try any of the language learning, like Nountown or Mondly or whatever it's called?
No,
because they do have the AI language models in there as well. I wanted to try it. I didn't get to try it yet because I read mixed reports. You know, like a lot of people said it doesn't really work well enough. But I think that could be a space that works really well.
Huge. I agree. No, I haven't. I think I wanted to try Immerse. I think was this language learning.
Another one. Yeah.
And I need to try Nountown. That they also have released something in mixed reality. I do. I mean, still the best AI implementation I've tried is not mixed reality. Is Bring Traveler by far, hands down, because it really has these walkie-talkie mechanics where you get it, and when you push the button, you push the trigger when you want to talk, you release it, you get the thinking aspect. Honestly, I think one of the big problems that agents have right now in XR, it's a UI problem. It is very hard to understand when the agent is ready to listen, when it's listening, when it's thinking, when it's replying back. It is very hard. Nobody has figured it out fully, and not everything works as the Bring Traveler kind of thing, because there what you do is that you deliberately decide with the trigger when it should listen, when it should stop listening. You get the UI conveniently positioning on the walkie-talkie. Brilliant, genius. Not everybody can do that. If everybody's trying to implement agents, try it out, because I think it's a must try.
I 100% agree. Gabriele, we implemented quite a few agents with Unreal and spatial context, and you wouldn't think, but that was one of the biggest problems in all of the scenarios. Like one of the scenarios we created was you're standing in front of a monitor and there's the AI agent and you talk to it. First of all, filter out who is actually speaking and the noise. You know, you feel like this should be solved, but it's not really solved. And the best, what feels the most interactive, I agree still, is not the open conversation, because there are too many false positive in terms of answering when you're not really asking something, but the push to talk kind of scenarios. And if you implement them correctly in your interaction paradigm, how do you trigger those assistants? Then it feels also much more responsive because you feel more in control of the conversation. But I think we're getting there. Like if you're looking at Gemini Pro and so on, it's getting much better in picking up only when it's supposed to, and so we're slowly getting there. But it used to be one of the biggest pain points. Also, like if you look at some of the other people doing this kind of installation with the AI, look at the microphone setups they usually have. It's really not so easy to just pick up the one that you want to pick up versus the noise in the surrounding. So it's a very interesting problem. And there you see the details matter to make the experience work in the end for mixed reality.
Yeah, I mean, if the listeners could see our faces right now, how we are communicating non-verbally with our faces to communicate who wants to speak, who is speaking, and stuff like that. I mean, there's a lot going on when talking to each other, and it's really hard for a machine to figure that out. So totally understandable that we're not still there yet. Also, a lot of stuff is happening. We need to come to an end of this talk. And as so often when we have guests, it's very obvious that we could talk for hours about all the stuff concerning XR and mixed reality. But to come to an end, we have 3 questions left. One, and the big topic is what's up next? So what's up next with a mixed reality report? So you gathered all the information. We have a first glimpse into the data. What do you plan to do with it more? Because you won't stop collecting data as far as you said.
No, effect. So the thing is indeed add another category, WebXR being one. I want to see if I will be able to get also some look at the spectacles. So maybe try to build also like a repository for those. But most importantly, I want to go back and then add a new data point and say it's like, okay, after 3 months, we've got this many more reviews and this much rating. This allows really to create trends and sees like, oh, how are these apps performing over a certain period of time? So that's another interesting thing that that certainly is gonna, let's say, keep these alive and make sense to keep adding information in it. And of course, add other apps that are going to be released, because I think that there is a good amount that is coming also coming months.
Also sounds you would probably need some help because the database is getting bigger, and if you want to do anything else in the future than just putting new data in your table, you probably need some help there. So you already said you're open for everybody helping you out.
If someone is, let's say, good coding, can build a good scraper, or maybe like a good designers, because right now some of the things that I've put together are like just fine in my opinion. Reach out. Happy to.
Really, I know this from. It's probably over 10 years ago that I did a YouTuber list, a gaming YouTuber, and I used some scraping tools. I actually stopped doing this because of the data regulations, and there were some emails in it. So at some point I thought it's getting too risky. I shut the whole thing down. But there were thousands it was impossible to update manually. And if you look enough, there are quite some really powerful web scraping tools out there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So you don't need to manually code it kind of to have scraping.
Yeah, I did something similar with all the RSS feeds of websites, of news outlets, because I wanted to know how often they change the titles of an article. They do that. And I was very interested in that, and then also clicked something together. And of course, all my Google Docs was filled with stuff. So but it's not that easy. You need a lot of time doing it, and it also helps when you have somebody who knows what to do, so you can do it in faster time. So if anyone is out there wants to help out with that, please feel free to contact Gabriel.
Contact me on LinkedIn.
Yes, contact via LinkedIn. And of course, we are also interested in Shapes XR. So your turn now to tell what's up next for Shapes XR. What can we expect in the future?
Right. So some of the core things the team is currently working on are, let's say, a better materials palette, because I think that visual fidelity, now that we have more powerful headset, can be pushed even further. Mm-hmm. So something we're looking at. And the other thing is, of course, we have heard over and over, not as straightforward as we expected, being animations. So the ability to, instead of just moving things forward, but just telling a better story, having designers build something that is even more polished, something that is already possible in a way. I mean, like, for example, right now you can even import your interactive Figma UI that you have built in Figma and just play it in VR. So that's very powerful because you don't need to rebuild it. You can just test the scale, size, and see how that fits in the environment. But yeah, I think that animations and better materials, some of the things that are coming earlier on.
Nice. So something to look forward to. And last question is more of an open question. Thomas and I were already discussing in the last episode a lot about it. And it's Android XR. Android XR, you have probably seen what Samsung has shown us, and also the video of Marques Brownlee, which, by the way, Thomas is playing in a New York club, professional frisbee. Talking about that, yes.
Ultimate frisbee.
Yeah. Ultimate frisbee, yes.
It's a cool sport. I did it a little bit.
I did also.
It's fun.
Really?
Yeah.
Is that something, maybe an XR thing people do, or
there could be an XR adoption of that. But you need some space. It doesn't really work. I mean, the cool thing about the rules is once you catch the thing, you have to not move. So it's maybe it would actually work in pretty well in mixed reality, because when you're throwing, you're not moving. So it makes a lot of sense, actually.
You're right.
Let's make that game.
Yeah, maybe you do now a startup with that. Marques would probably also enjoy this app very much. But the question here is, of course, when you watch that video, it's all happening in mixed reality. There's not a single virtual reality app shown. They're not even talking about that, like a game full immersive, although there will be. We already know that there will be full VR apps. But what do you think about this one? The focus on it is, of course, AI right now. And the question is, how much will it actually shape our XR economy? So it's even more AR than, I would say, like the Apple Vision Pro.
So can you rephrase the question? What do you exactly mean by that? Because
I think if I should paraphrase Thomas, is like we've already seen in the Vision Pro that the focus was on spatial computing, which I always find is a bit of a funny term, meaning like 2D floaty apps in your space. And it seemed like there's a lot of focus on that because the App Store is being brought over. Is what do you see as the future of Android XR? Is that what they're pushing for, or is the whole ecosystem, all VR, what they're pushing for? What do you think?
I believe that there was a place for mixed reality as a whole, as a series of apps and content and experiences that would just make sense as a whole. Over the past couple of years, that grew. But I feel that right now, the industry is taking MR as a learning ground for this future with AR glasses. Because I don't think that Android is going to release this headset, how much that's going to cost. And it's going to make a significant impact. Because I do feel that 90% of what's possible to do will be possible to do on Android XR. You will be likely be able to do it on a Quest. Let's be honest, at a fraction of the cost. So why would Android change that? Is that because there are going to be, Spotify in it? I mean, like, really? I mean, you can have Spotify on the browser already on a Quest if you want, right? You toggle the multitasking feature, you can get multiple screens and you get on one Spotify. You can try other apps that do it. So I think that see this as a learning ground with AI especially. And that's something that I don't have an answer, because there hasn't been anything like that before, right? So what will come out of it, it's unsure. But that is another good opportunity for learning and how we will be able to make this transition from something that is then going to be maybe more mainstream. And over the past weeks, there has been several announcements where everybody's working on these AR glasses. Now, I don't know, it's true, when it's going to come out. But maybe, let's say, progressive improvements or what we have from the Ray-Ban, it's going to come maybe earlier than what we think. That it's not going to be the full-fledged experience. But when we start having some small digital content, right, that is going to be part of these experiences. So I don't think Android XR is going to shake things up too much. And due to the cost, due to that, the apps are probably still going to be like 2D apps that at the end people will realize, meh. I mean, at the end, I could do it on another headset. Sure, I could watch better movies and so on. I think it's really a training ground for what's going to come next. And it's sad to say in a way, because I would like to say, yes, it's going to happen. But we're always like chasing what's the next thing a bit.
I really like it when people are not like pushing too hard in one direction. We have seen that in the past too often and been too disappointed too often because it didn't turn out as we hoped for. So being more realistic about something is a good thing. Looking back at my notes, I actually recall what I wanted to ask you because will AI cause more mixed reality and will better the quality of mixed reality? And when you watch Android XR, the integration of AI is much deeper than it is right now on the Quest platform. So this is probably the direction I wanted to go with that question. Yeah, no, then I think so. And the two things is something that we discussed about. One is this computer vision aspect, where thanks to AI, you'll be able to understand more of your surrounding and make it a more embedded experience. And the other, honestly, when we're going to figure it out, is this agent side, right? Then it's like, it has value, right? Because right now, if I want to ask a question to ChatGPT or whatever other model it is, I need to take out my phone or push something. Well, instead, having something like an entity, right, that I don't think it should be a humanized shape, right? But I think an entity that can answer this question and is in my own environment, I think that is certainly going to add value. So those are the most immediate one that I think would probably boost the use cases for a mixed reality, because otherwise it will be kind of like a bit meaningless. You're still disconnected from the real world, but those might certainly connect and make more sense.
I keep coming back to kind of 3 dimensions for this. What do you need from AI and AR to give you value? You have to understand the context of what's happening in the real world connected to the user. You have to understand the intention of the user. What goals do they want to fulfill right now, to be able to help them in the context. And you have to have persistence, meaning for the user itself, you can connect to earlier things that you have discussed, and for multiple users, you're referencing the same kind of surrounding and topics. And an example of that out of a mobile phone is, like when you come to a train station and Google tells you the train that you usually take will leave in 5 minutes, better run. That is taking the context. Where are you? That's taking your likely intention, because whenever you go here, you go to the train station, and it also involves, other entities and schedules and data, and that's the persistent part. And I think if you combine those 3 dimensions, that's really the key to successful AR integrated with AI. The data and privacy discussion is a tricky one on that, but that's really how you make helpful and powerful AI and AR.
All right. And I think we conclude this episode. Thank you very much, Gabriele, for being here. It was a pleasure having you. Great insights into the mixed reality report. And everybody should check him out on LinkedIn. And also, where should they click? What's the domain of the XR AI Spotlight?
Spotlight.substack. There.com. That's the one where you can find the report and all other interviews.
And of course, everything will be linked in our show notes. So thank you very much, Gabriele. And I would say this was the 93rd episode of Spatial Realities.
Congratulations.
Yeah. it's fun to do. Soon we're reaching 100. I just realized that.
Yeah.
If you like this podcast, we would be delighted if you would recommend it to others. Feel free to share the episode on social media and send them to colleagues and friends, and give us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Here again, the reference to our Discord server. You can find a link to the show notes on spatialrealities.de.
My name is Thomas Riedel.
I am Thomas Bedenk.
Thanks for tuning in, and see you next time. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye, guys.
Ja, und wenn euch der Podcast gefällt und ihr mich bei dem unterstützen wollt, was ich hier so Tag ein, Tag aus mache, dann gebt mir doch gerne einen Kaffee aus. Oder spendiert mir sogar eine Kaffee-Flatrate. Das könnt ihr super niederschwellig machen mit Ko-fi unter ko-fi.com. Ein Link findet ihr in den Shownotes. Vielen Dank für euren Support.